Happy New Year, everyone. This is T Falcon Napier. Welcome to the Oracle of the Self. This is our ongoing coaching and training, and today is a special event because it is New Year's Day. And we're going to be looking at a ChangeWorks profile I put together to help us get the new year started off on the right track. Normally, when we do a New Year's Day kind of a change grid, it's just about general things for the coming year, making it the best year you possibly can, and, living a life. And, it's that kind of stuff that you would probably find many coaches and human development professionals doing this kind of year, just to kind of connect with their prospects and their clients, and try to channel things into some more opportunity. But this year we said, you know what, we've spent almost an entire year's worth of time going over a great many things in the world of tension management and the change grid, and that with the Oracle of the Self. So I said, let's use the change grid in a slightly different way. So for those of you who aren't using this in a professional capacity, I can tell you that very often when we're doing a training program, we will do a pre-training skills self-assessment. So working with the client, we develop an activity list that is somehow or another pertains to what the client has hired us to teach or to cover. And so we administer that about 4 weeks before the event. Then we look at that data and use that data to customize the training program, whatever we're choosing to deliver. And then usually immediately following the program, we deliver the same activity list to the same audience members. We do that because we'd like to see what impact does simply attending a training session have on someone's perceptions of their readiness to get something done. And so that way we can show a client, here is what the impact of the experience is. We then do it several weeks later so that we can say, and here's the lasting impact that it had. Because you guys all know at the end of a training program, everyone's all hyped. And then life happens and they don't get the chance to really plug things into play and that. So we would like to be able to show there is an immediate return on their investment. There's also a long-term return on their investment. But even more important for us from the business perspective is that doing these change grids at different intervals lets us show the client what still needs to be worked on. So what is the group absorbed, and what do they still need a little bit more guidance around, et cetera. And so this is basically what I sent you guys was a kind of an interim check-in. I don't know what to call it, but basically I went like, what should they know at this particular point? What are these 12 or 13 specific areas, thoughts, concepts, tools, techniques, whatever, that I'd like to know that everyone is able to do. And really, I'd like to know the degree to which everyone is able to do these things so that we can clean it all up. These are central thoughts, central activities, et cetera, for the world of tension management. So that's why I put it together. Now, for reasons that I don't understand, we had several of these bounce back to us, and a couple of people just plain, didn't get the link or whatever. And so I thought that rather than reading the full results today, what I'm going to do is instead talk about why these activities were chosen. And so you guys really can then understand to do that. Interestingly enough, the people that filled it out aren't on the call. And so I can't read their grid if they're not there. So this is working out just fine. All right. So any comments, questions before we get into that change grid? And
just a big
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't think I received that list.
Really?
Of course not, Brian.
Neither did
I didn't get it either, T.
Yeah, no one got it. That was all right, but you get it. You will get the link. I will probably, if I can figure it out, even chat the link over to you. But nevertheless, you guys, I think, do want to take a moment to fill that out. I think another aspect to this, and why I don't want to really do readings so much today, is that I think you guys at this stage should be able to read a change grid. And so I'm more curious to hear what you say, what you think your change grid is saying, and how you're going to use that information rather than me just read your grid. You know what I mean? I mean, quite candidly, I read grids for clients. Your students read your own grids. So but it's
Yeah.
fun to hear. Yeah, well, seriously,
can we pass our grids to the student behind us?
you can pass your grids to the student behind you. Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
we'll get the one in front of us.
When we're doing this, training a group of people inside a corporate setting and we have a very finite amount of time to do it, that's exactly what we do. We say you guys need to be able to use this tool as a tool for coaching, whether it's coaching in a formal way or peer-to-peer sorts of stuff. You guys should be able to know what a change grid is telling you. And if you don't, then that's what we're going to spend our time on in whatever this year unfolds into. I'm no longer predicting. I'm just going with the flow.
So, Pete, may I ask you this? Like
yeah,
in this, I love this interval aspect of assessing people because I think we have an unhealthy relationship with this idea of self-improvement in general.
yeah,
I think we're obsessed with it, and so we're always approaching things as broken instead of a continuum
yeah.
of a project. And so there's no self-unfoldment, if that is such a
You're
word.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And that's why one of the products that we kind of, I don't know, used in a lot of different creative kinds of ways was ChangeWorks journaling. Brian, were you around when we were doing ChangeWorks journaling?
No, that
Okay.
would have, I like that. I like
Okay. Yeah.
journaling.
So ChangeWorks journaling is a coaching product or a consulting product, however you want to do it, where basically you say, we're going to spend some time together coming up with what is your mission critical activity list for either the next 3 months or for the next year. And you'd put that together and you would fill out a change grid immediately. Well, then, if you chose to look at something at the annual level, every month you would complete the exact same change grid again. And working with your coach or your consultant, you would fine tune what your path is towards each of these mission critical goals that you put together. And so it allows the client to actually see their progress, and it allows us to fine tune our strategies to really get people exactly where they should be on the change grid to most naturally perform whatever it is the activity is.
Interesting. Do you see
Now,
gaps in between the pre-training, the
no, it's totally separate.
symptom perceptions, and then like the one that you do subsequent weeks later? Are you seeing what gaps are?
You are, particularly that. Now, that's the way it's done for training. When we're talking about this ChangeWorks journaling product, it really is more of a one-on-one sort of
Okay,
thing because
got it.
the
Got
activity
it.
list has to be unique. Well, I think it has to be unique, but the other
Yeah.
way you can do it, and this is how we do it more often, is do it at a quarterly level, because our thought is that asking someone to come up with a list of mission critical activities for the next year is a big ask.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just focus on the next quarter, in which case you'd put together the list, you'd fill out the change grid, and then you'd fill it out again every single week. For the next, you end up with a set of 13 grids by the time you're done. That's the journal. And, again, you're working with your coach or your consultant or whatever, and they're helping you to develop your plans. So it is something that certainly anyone who's doing the oracle of the self should be able to do for themselves. I mean, there's nothing magical to it. Just do the same change grid, over and over and see how you're progressing. The big challenge in doing it is helping someone who is familiar with the change grid set aside the tendency to try to make it say what they want it to say. So we've said to everyone from the very, very beginning, this isn't a test. There's not right answers or wrong answers. There is only value in it if you're being open and honest, candid with yourself. If you want to lie to yourself, the change grid will reflect your lies, but only you and perhaps a coach that you've been working with for a while would know that you're lying, or we know you're lying because your behavior doesn't align with what you're saying the change grid is saying. So we kind of go like, you guys have to just recognize that the change grid is a mirror. And all you want to do when you're filling it out is just be in the moment, answer the questions as you genuinely feel in that moment, and know that the results are going to reveal to you what that moment is really all about. If you're going to put it together as though you've already achieved the great level of ability and mastered the activity, your grid will show that, but we'll know it's not really accurate. So don't lie to yourself. I mean, this is the oracle of the self. This is you talking to you about you. Do you really need to lie to yourself?
That's why I like this activity in particular, because I was just writing in my journal as I embark on this personal retreat. What I think is often missing, if we look at the science, if you will, of consciousness, in any given point in time, our consciousness, we're dealing with rather inaccurate, incomplete information.
That's right.
Like it's always going to be based on something from the past. And so what I see happen every year is this idea that you get this ping or this urge for a significant change, which is great,
Yep.
but it almost always approached from the perspective of not wanting the moment to dictate to you what the change should do. So you try to change the moment and started instead of changing the nature that met that moment. And to me, that's the gap.
Yeah.
If you're going to change the nature that met the moment, then there's some things that you have to do about you, not the
That's right.
moment.
That's right. And to me, the number one thing is that, and again, it's an inherent problem with individuals in society that they haven't heard the voice of their oracle of the self for so long. They don't recognize it. They hear the voices of other messages that have been somehow or another allowed to enter their mind, their brain.
There's a lot of things working against us. There's a lot of things
right.
that there's voices in your head. There's that internal dialogue.
That's right.
That problem with students a lot when trying to get them to empty and just take in what I'm saying to them. Chew it up, spit out the bones, but don't start with your cup full. And there are people who you try to talk to them and you can tell nothing's getting past it. There's just internal dialogue going on.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. And and this is probably a great reason why such a retreat where you're off the grid can be valuable, because then you go like, I'm not getting bombarded every moment of the day while I'm on my retreat. That gives me a chance to kind of go like, what is all of this noise that is in my head, and what part of it is genuinely me? And that's, I think, where this idea about filling out ChangeWorks as a journal really helps you to isolate the voice of your authentic self, whatever that means, but the voice that is genuinely you. And there's no reason for you to lie to yourself. So you got a lot of other messages that you're being bombarded with that are lies, or at least leaning a particular way, whatever the case may be. And, you got to sort it all out. What's genuinely you?
Right. You guys, Andrew's point, the thing I always hear in terms of reflection is people say they don't have time for it. I keep talking about the importance of this managing your attention in a world that's overwhelmed with all the stimulus coming at you. So there's no surprise to me that people feel out of sorts with one another. But when I ask them about reflection and making that a priority, or at least somewhat important for yourself, people say, I don't have time for that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then the problem is that their only quiet time is when they're first falling asleep. But by then they're in such a cortisol overload that they really can't do anything beneficial in their thoughts.
You know what? I've known people who literally play have a TV in their room. They have a TV in the kitchen and a TV in the living room and a TV in the den. Yeah. They literally have the TV on as they fall asleep. They walk in, someone I knew quite well would walk into her house, turn on the TV and start walking around, changing clothes from work, changing clothes, and I said, why do you have that? Why don't you shut that off? It's just noise. Well, it keeps me company. It keeps you from thinking. It's not just say they don't have time. It's that they are desperately trying not to think about things.
Right. Why don't you like your own company? Isn't that crazy?
The reflection thing is what Brian was saying, that people say they don't have enough time, but then you're not thinking. You're just reacting to everything that comes your way.
That's right.
But
and
try. They actively work at having that happen so that they're never
thinking. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know if people do it much anymore because we tend to use our phones as our alarm clocks, but how many people had a radio alarm? They were awakened by the upgrid messaging of CKLW, you know, or whatever it happens to be. It's like, and that's why I've never liked radio. Radio is exceptionally upgrid in order to get people's attention, because it's you know, it's missing a visual pathway, so it has to work harder with what it's got. So yeah.
Awesome. I just read an article and it said that close to 90% of first timers who go to a classical music performance say they'll never go again.
Because it's unless it's certain music, it's going to be downgrade compared to.
It's so boring.
Yep.
Hundreds of thousands of hours of intense training and skills in an instrument that I wouldn't even know how to pick up. And then the sounds they make are so boring.
Yeah, people do that. Well, for those of you who aren't locals, we recently went to a concert and with Tom and Anja and some other friends, and it was the Russian music, and very famous pieces. Everything they played is something that you probably have heard at some point in time, but it's upgrade stuff. You know, the Russian music has. What was my comment? I think I said so many notes.
Yeah,
so many notes. So, there you go.
Which ones would you have me remove, sire?
Exactly.
Except the Scheherazade the tempos were too slow.
Yeah, well, you know, some you got to choose your concert correctly. That's certainly true. I mean, try to fall asleep at a John Sousa, March festival. All right, anywho, let's kind of take a look at that activity list. But this is what we're really trying to do. You guys are all at the point where you should be able to fill out a change grid thoughtfully and honestly. So this isn't a test. There's no prize, I promise you. So
I want a prize.
You know, you want a prize. Well, the prize is having someone who inside of your own brain that's telling you the truth. And so there you go. Yeah, eat that person. Name it Anja. But all capital letters. Yeah. The greater self. Okay, anywho, so let's look at this activity list that I put together. So this hopefully encompasses most of what I would like you guys to have developed some fluency around by this stage of the game. So let's start with number 1, walking the path of self-discovery effectively when exploring a situation. So the path of self-discovery to me is the very first thing that we do in our work, whether we're applying this to ourselves or with a family member, or we're using this professionally. All discussions about change begin by walking the path of self-discovery. And so you guys know this. It's white, green, black, yellow, red. It's current situation, desired situation, obstacles, solutions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call the red step. And so we do this because it's where the natural thought process begins anyway. So why are you exploring a situation? It's because X is happening. Well, that's the current situation. So we just say, keep that in a nice tight compartment. After you're finished looking at the current situation, what do you do next? You look at the what?
Desired.
I was going to say, this does not bode well. So,
no, I didn't know you were asking a question.
Oh, yeah. I'm asking because I got to put together the lesson plan for the next week. Okay. But walking the path of self-discovery, current situation, desired situation.
Right.
After you look at the desired situation, what do you want to look at next?
Obstacles.
Yeah, what's in your way? Why are you not already at your desired situation? It is because there is some obstacle or set of obstacles, real or imagined, that are in your way. After you look at the obstacles, then you're going to put together, what's the next step?
Solutions.
The solutions. And then after looking at the solutions, you're going to go into the red step, and the red step says, all right, go inside of your mind and your emotions and, examine it from that whole perspective and answer the question, how do you really feel about this? And by feel, I mean, are there some instincts that are giving you some warnings? You know, you getting any yellow flags, red flags, just at that kind of intuitive sort of level, whatever. It's about predictions, hunches, instinct, intuition, all those things that cannot be readily measured, cannot be proven, but definitely exist as part of the way human beings process the world around them. So we want to have a place for it, but you put it anywhere earlier along the path and it's going to distort the reality. So white, green, black, and yellow tend to be very logically driven. So what is happening? What do you want? What's in your way? How are you going to do it? These are very logically driven sorts of questions. Well, we can't not leave space for that whole other part of who we are and how we operate. So that's what the red step is for. That's why it's at the end. Sometimes logic fails us. And it doesn't give us all the information that we need, or the information it's giving us is not necessarily 100% reliable. Then we have to turn inside and say, how do we feel about this? What's our hunch? What's the instinct telling us? You know, it's a different form of intelligence. It's just still there.
Absolutely. I love that, the path of self-discovery, because those four in particular, and why they have to be truth, is because that is the mirror. Like, that's telling you exactly how you met the moment. And then the feelings, because it processes stimulus differently, live and candid camera. If you're honest, then you're going to feel a certain way that the body has already picked up on something.
That's
right. And that's going to be more relevant information. Mm-hmm. But again, when you're dishonest, if you have these wants that are driven by, I always say that, to me, there's a difference between being internally led and externally driven.
Yep.
And I know the difference immediately when something caught my eye and it's the shiny object, because the feeling isn't there, as opposed to when I get time to think and reflect, I value quality over quantity. So if I'm rushing in that way, I'll know it immediately. I don't have to sit and think about it. I can feel it.
Yep. And I forget which that bright shiny object is one of the biases, and I forget the name of the bias. Well, there's so many biases. It's
keep track so many of them. They have another like FOMO. I was just reading.
Yeah, FOMO, fear of missing out. Really big problem.
Now they have another one because of AI, or due to AI, and it's called FOBO, which is fear of being obsolete. I just read a whole article about this.
Yeah, well, you got to evolve. That's the world of Darwin.
So, right.
You know, we're ruled by Darwin here, people. So adapt or die is the universal ultimatum. What's that? FOMO is the fear of missing out. It's a real problem for generation, the millennials, who else? I forget when it all started, but because of their way of interacting, being so driven by social media, there are far more things happening at the same time that they could all tap into. And their great fear is on missing out, on being in the right place at the right time, the right group, the right conversation, the right whatever. So they just tend to go because they're afraid of missing out.
Yeah, talk about no internal thought process, just constant external assault.
That's right, because now there's the expectation that you must be there, whatever form there takes. Because if you're not there, then you're not there. And that means you're not part of that subculture, that little click moment, that whatever, that trend. And so it's a big deal. I personally, I've never felt the fear of missing out. I'm perfectly fine missing out.
That's the worst one for me. For when somebody tries to sell me, they use that. You know, when they use that, it's like, are you kidding me? I'm fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, right.
I'm going to miss out. I miss out. It means it just wasn't meant to be.
Just not meant to be. I made it this far. I think I can keep going. You know.
Right.
All right. So, but my point is that all of you guys should either have the path of self-discovery as a thought process, a structured thought process, ready to go. And the change grid results will tell me if I need to put more energy into it. I will tell you that just in the results that we've received so far, the pattern is showing that although people are reporting a high ability to walk the path, they are reporting the level of challenge greater than we want it to be. So you can see here under desired rating, I said walking the path of self-discovery effectively when exploring situations needs to be at coordinates 10 and 8. Coordinates 10 and 8 is right here. That's that analytical driver. Even 11 and 8 would be fine for people that are really strong. Now they're a driven analytical driver. This is where we want you to be, because that particular task has an analytical element to it. It's structured, right? Where it's logically driven. So yeah, it's an analytical activity. I'm getting people plotting at 10-10 instead of 10-8. So they're viewing the level of challenge as being 2 points greater than, to me, someone who really has this skill under their belt would be reporting it to be. And so that tells me as a trainer that I need to get people to exercise their use of the path of self-discovery a bit more, so whatever that feeling of challenge is gets taken care of. All right. I won't explain that for all of it, but that's why we do this. I need to put together my lesson plan. And to do that effectively, I need to meet my students where they are. So, pardon me while I choke to death. Oh, by the way, little sidebar. You guys might have noticed in the calls that we did before the holidays that my energy was in a very different place. Well, it was because I was constant pain. And I think I told you guys that I was suspected of a kidney stone. I did give birth to a lovely kidney stone. And if you'd like to see it, I'm going to create a website just for it. Yeah.
Wow.
I think it should have its own presence on.
I didn't mean to ask you a question.
Yeah.
And feel free to, if you don't want to. Did you handle it?
Well, yeah. I mean, because the doctor said he wanted it. Yeah.
Did you? No, I mean, did you handle it? Did you feel it? I'm wondering about how the density of.
It's rock hard.
Really? Like you couldn't smash it.
No, with the strength of my fingers, mind you, I wasn't wanting to, but I wanted to just see, is this something that is more of an accumulation of smaller particles, or is this literally a rock? No, it's literally a rock.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow.
I've been meaning to ask you, and it's a little personal.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do have it because I showed it to, the doctor said like, oh, well, that's no big deal. And I'm going like, no big deal.
Oh, outside my body, right.
What would a big one feel like?
However.
So it's such a disconnect for physicians because they're not experiencing the pain, right?
Right. Maybe a requirement for you to be maybe a requirement for you to be a urologist is that you have to have passed a kidney stone. Anyway, my energy in an instant was back. So it's amazing. There is always a lesson in tension management. When you are going through something that is causing a low level, a moderate level of continuous discomfort, there were punctuated moments of true pain, but mostly it was just this constant ache 24/7. I don't care how much ibuprofen I took, it was there. That has to take a toll on your overall ability to manage your energy.
Absolutely.
It's consuming so much energy in and of itself. Is there enough energy left for you to overcome that discomfort?
Right. But see, you had a presence of mind to actually pay attention to that, whereas most people will resist it, unfortunately, and just keep going as if until it's way too late. Because as you talked about, the way the body manages energy, demand on one thing puts a strain on another area.
Right.
And that's this balancing act that the body's always trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's difficult for people, when they resist that, to help them get it. And unfortunately, for some of them, it's too late. Kidney stones can be quite painful and take you out.
we talk to Andrew about that. Yeah. And then we found out a chat GPT sometimes shares information that I believe the world did not need to know. And one of those is that kidney stones can achieve the size of a golf ball.
Yes.
And I went like, oh, how do you not notice that forming in your kidney? You know, that didn't happen overnight. Okay.
Right, right. But
Wow.
the body's highly adaptable. So again, some people have different thresholds for pain and tolerance for that, and
Right,
so
right,
they'll
right.
Some
just
people
resist
do
it.
cocaine every day.
Some people do
Exactly.
cocaine every day, self-medicate, you know. Anyway,
Exactly.
but no, my goals for 2024 include never having a kidney stone again. So we'll see how successful I am in that pursuit.
We're
Okay.
glad you're back.
There, yeah, well, it's true. So, all right. So, walking the path of self-discovery, you guys know what it is. I'm trying to figure out how much energy we need to put into reinforcing it, revisiting it, etc., because it really is the essential first tool you use in the world of tension management. So, you got to know that one. Now, activity number 2. If you want to take the path of self-discovery to a deeper level of detail, when you get to that desired situation step, that green step, rather than just saying, what do I want? What's the goal? What's my whatever? You would say, nah, we're going to fill out those 4 aspects of control. So as far as this situation is concerned, what do I hope to gain? What are the other 3 questions?
What do
What do I not want to lose?
What do I want to lose?
What's it going to cost?
Yeah, what do I not? What
Not
do I
gain,
not
not
want to
lose.
gain?
And not lose.
And what do I not want to lose? These are the 4 questions. So this 4 aspects of control, that's what it's all about. You're looking at a situation, and before you take any action, you say, wait, as far as the situation is concerned, what do we hope to gain? What do we hope to lose? What do we not want to gain? And what do we not want to lose? It really is just looking at whatever that situation is from 4 different aspects that I think give you a complete picture of what's going on, or a more complete picture at the very least there. And so I think it's really important that you guys understand that by filling out this matrix, you can identify the deal breakers before you've invested any time, energy, etc., into pursuing the outcome. Right? So how often in life have you personally experienced, or you know people who experienced putting all kinds of time and energy into resources to do something only to abandon it down the road because it ended up being too much this, too little that, other things got in the way? I mean, how early would you like to know that there is a strong likelihood that you will not follow through and get this done?
Day 1.
Yeah, and that's my whole point. So there's 4 aspects of control, because generally, think about this. Generally, when a situation arises, the situation is inherently an upgrade experience, right? It's a new thought. It's a new idea. It's a new problem. It's a new whatever. It's new. And because it's new, there is more interest, excitement, focus, all that upgrade stuff is happening. Well, one of the things we know about being upgraded is that you become impulsive. You tend to have more of a sense of urgency about something. And that means the likelihood of you doing your due diligence goes down. Well, this 4 aspects of control is the due diligence part of creating that particular goal. Make sense?
Love it.
Yep. And so I think that's, and again, these are portable. We haven't talked about tension yet. But those 2 things all by themselves can be very, very useful in helping you become more masters of change on that. Okay.
Love all right. This list.
Yeah. Yep. Now we'll get to the tension part later on in the list. But if I said, what's the 3rd most important thing I would like you guys to have control of? And that is keeping your relationships free of toxic negativity. So that means don't start relationships with people that are toxic. And if you have friends, coworkers, colleagues, whatever, that are toxic, how are you going to minimize that or avoid it altogether inside of your relationships that are central to your daily living? instead of eliminating the relationship, can you eliminate toxic moments inside of the relationship? And so one of the things that Linda and I are always conscious of is when we share a piece of information, why are we sharing that? I'll give you an example. Until I told her this morning, Linda didn't know that there was an earthquake and tsunami in Japan. Quite honestly, does Linda benefit in any way, shape, or form from knowing that there has been a environmental catastrophe in Japan?
Well, she might feel better about herself and her decision to live in.
You know what, T? When you were telling me that, it ran through my mind. Did I really need to know that?
Yeah. Did you really need to know that? Now, go ahead, Anja. What were you saying?
Well, don't you feel better about living in Arizona?
Well, yeah, but then that
becomes in Panama. You might be thinking, "Oh God,
right, it's coming for us." Yeah. Or any coastline. Yeah, so Brian, when you're in Bali, just stay inland. Don't. There's no reason. You can see the water from a hill.
Right, exactly.
Oh,
No, definitely inland.
Yeah. I mean, come on.
It's off the beaten path, and
or the very least, check to make sure that Bali is protected with that tsunami early warning system.
Right.
Because that was the big problem from Indonesia. And what they were supposed to learn is that they knew that there was possibilities of tsunami action hours before the tsunamis arrived, but they had no way of alerting the public with sirens or anything like that.
Right. See, these a lot of times these government officials, when they get complacent, that's what happens. Like we've seen the same thing in these health projects in Central and South America.
Yeah, because what's the likelihood that that's going to happen? So it's like, well, 200,000 plus people are dead, and moments before their death, they thought they were enjoying a wonderful tropical, vacation on. I forget which island got hit the most severely, but yeah.
It hit southern Thailand extremely hard too.
Yeah, yep. And then I know it ricocheted the other direction, and there was a lot of damage in India as well. And I think we even felt some activity along the west coast of the U.S. Obviously, nothing to the magnitude closer by. But anyway, yeah, Brian, just stay in. You'll feel okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So now, continuing with this idea about keeping relationships free of toxic negativity. It is an exercise in becoming aware of why does my level of tension compel me to share something with someone else? And is that, at what point do I need to become more responsible for the messages that I put out into the world and those around me? So, and I'm saying that because if you want to keep your relationships free of toxic negativity, at a certain point, you have to ask yourself, am I contributing toxic information? It's not just happening to me. I'm part of the overall thing. So now keep in mind that it's not a binary thing. It's either not toxic or it is toxic. There's a range of things. And you might say that there is a reason why someone needs to have this piece of information. And so I'm sharing it. As opposed to this is just something that entered my mind and now I feel compelled to broadcast it further or whatever. And then the last thing I want to talk about for toxic negativity is that it's very often the case that the negativity that someone has in their head is coming from themselves. So not only are they might be pointing toxic messages or perpetuating toxic messages out onto the world itself, but even in their own internal dialogue, are they their own worst enemy? Are they, distorting their own reality? Are they whatever? That too can be toxic negativity.
Absolutely. So, that's that misery loves company or something like that. That old adage says. So
yeah, misery loves company, or you need to find some way. Well, it's all in brain chemistry. If the brain has been stimulated to create a certain emotional state, it's going to very easily find things to sustain that emotional state.
And absolutely. So we know somebody who's a grief addict.
Oh yeah.
It's like he looks for grief porn no matter what you say. If you say, like, there was just an earthquake it actually hit a neighborhood in Huntington Beach where someone we know lives, and he said, phew, it was really a small quake, nothing broke, no big deal, but it was really different when it hits your town. We've been through a bunch of It's just kind of, wow. Well, the immediate response was, aftershocks? Well, is anybody hurt? What happened? What, you've got to watch for aftershocks. Are you all set? Did you lock up all your cabinets? They were like 5, 6 months that completely negated. You just think you didn't read what he wrote just now.
Right. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if that's a bias or whatever, but there's something about catastrophizing. I mean, I talk about awfulizing, but catastrophizing, I think, is one of those things because, Anji, you're absolutely right. They're addicted to the neurochemicals that get released when they are in a fearful state.
Right.
And
exactly.
so, you know,
It's
there is
training. You train yourself for all these behaviors. You train yourself in them. So, you know, when you meet someone who's toxic and you're not, you will know immediately. Like my friend that went into psychiatry when we were in medical school together, he always reminded me that if you're in presence of someone and they're talking and you leave feeling drained, there's probably some mental health issues there. Like that's his warning sign or his trigger to kind of like engage them in conversation. He can figure things out quite easily because you know we both studied neurobiology. So his whole thing was about the inside behavior components. And that's what the change grid actually shows. It's one thing to say, hey, I have the label of where I show up. That's another thing to explore the iceberg effect, like what's underneath that, because there's definitely layers and layers underneath it. And without that kind of data, you're really not managing the tension in the most elegant way, as we talked about, you know, the difference between efficiency, effectiveness, and elegance. And I think it requires a level of awareness when you're dealing with toxicity and toxic relationships, because it's going to, you know, resonate with something in you. Then the moment itself is often revealing something about you, but then you venture to try to change the other person.
That's right.
Or the moment.
Well, and so, you know, if you really just examine that dynamic as you've mapped it out, how many different possible sources of toxic messaging are possible? You know, there's messages from outside. There's old messages that are still dwelling in your brain. There's things that you create out of thin air. So you know, dangerous elements that are being just vividly imagined by you. And then there's stuff you're sharing. There's whatever. There's so much toxicity available to us that we have to be a little vigilant around. Which, by the way, look what I said for the desired rating. You should be at 10/10.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's out there. Like you're
I want you to be a driven driver, an amiable driven driver, because when you do sever ties with people, or when you are having, it's tough to have a conversation about people exhibiting negative behavior because no one thinks they're being negative. They just think that they're just talking, and they don't really add that assessment element to it about, is this helping? Is this hurting? Is this with a point, or is this pointless? So why is it being done? So to really hold a guard.
I'm being passionate.
Yes.
I'm just.
Oh yeah. You know, this is part of the problem of English. We've got so many adjectives that they can find one that's comparatively positive. Because then we'd have to say, okay, I get it. You're displaying tremendous passion. What is underlying the passion? So, you know, passion is about loving something. Passion is about being transfixed about something. What is it that you're really transfixed about? And you know, they'll ultimately find out that they're just addicted to dopamine. And you know, spreading bad news is one of the ways that you can get by watching other people join you in your distress. You are actually relieved. And so they're not conscious that they're doing that. So my point is that I think that a skilled tension manager needs to be vigilant about toxic negativity, because ultimately you are the messaging in your head, right? So you got to make sure those messages are yours, that they're clean, diplomatic, or, you know, or rather that they are have been that you're talking to yourself about that information in a diplomatic kind of way. Whatever that burden is, you're the watchdog, you're the centurion, you're the one who's protecting whatever it is that you're allowing in. And that's what 10/10 is all about.
Love it.
Thoughts about that?
Yeah,
all right.
Definitely. I like the word vigilant.
Well, you need to be. You let your guard down, and that stuff's already in your head. I don't know what research has been done around it, but I will always believe that a human never forgets anything. That the reason why the brain is so big and has so little we know about it is that it's all just storage facility. And, so because we know that things that we thought we forget might suddenly come back to us in a dream or in a different kind of a altered state sort of thing we'll start having. It's all in there, but it does get distorted. It does get buried. It does get, whatever. And so I don't want the message to come in to my head rather than try to manage it somehow once it's in.
Right. And that toxic kind of relationship, especially like if it's with family, those things can happen quite subtle. And so if you're not
Absolutely.
vigilant, you will find yourself that it used to happen to me quite often between father. He's like
Well,
the
because in all
psychic
likelihood, those are the kinds of toxic, negative sort of, whether it's a full relationship or just bits and pieces of it,
Exactly.
they entered slowly. It took a
Exactly.
whole lifetime for your family dynamic to form.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, this is not something that you went like, oh, they're being toxic, shut them off. You don't even notice at first. It's just, insidious.
Right. It's under the auspices of constructive criticism. That's what I
Oh,
used to hear
yeah.
with my father all the time, but he's always given constructive criticism, it seems. And so my
You should.
grandfather was the mediator that will always tell me, okay, do you prefer to be right or do you prefer to have peace?
Yeah.
And you need to make decisions on that the side that you plan to be on. And so but I
Right.
would get into, but I'm right and he's wrong and I'm right. And no,
Yeah. Yeah. And
sometimes
it's like,
silence is your best advocate.
and
Silence.
even in a primary relationship, I can tell you from, working with different clients and all that sort of stuff that I'll just say to them, okay, fine. If you win the argument, what's the reward? What's the prize? What does it look like? I mean,
Right.
I want to know, what do you actually get by winning? Because the cost of winning has a much, much, much higher, uh, what do I say, problem factor.
Burden. Yeah, it's a burden when you're trying to. I just read some interesting research about um, people once they understand that they're on their deathbed and like they're dying, there's nothing else that can be done. And so this physician that's in palliative care goes out and interviews them and does this stuff. And the common theme is many of them say they wish they had spent less time trying to prove themselves,
Yep.
especially through like toxic relationships, and more time trying to discover the truth of
Right.
themselves.
Just be yourself. Stop trying
That's the
to
oracle of
prove.
self.
Yeah, we could tell you a whole lot about that living in an over 55 community. There's still plenty of people here that are trying to prove something. And it's like, you're retired. Anyway, okay, let's work our way.
Now.
Yeah, right. It's kind of like, we weren't impressed then, we're not impressed now.
Right.
It ain't happening.
Want me to call you captain? You've been out of the military for 55 years. No. So, okay. All right. So, yeah, anyway, keep relationships free of toxic negativity. Number 4, practicing the art of caring detachment. It is interesting that in the profiles that you guys have submitted so far, by the way, Chris, Tim, you guys filled it out. I'll be happy to show everyone their results next call. You should have received your results already. So you'll know what I mean when I'm saying what I'm about to say, is practicing the art of caring detachment something that happens when you're out grid, or is practicing the art of caring detachment an automatic happening when you keep yourself in the center?
Number 2.
Number 2.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
number
I'm kind of
two.
and so I'm kind of thinking, like, if I'm really working hard on being detached, I think that's the definition of being attached.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
as I'm looking at some of these grids, I go, certain activities we really need to come at from a very different perspective, rather than this being something that's. And by the way, the reason for it is because it's not that people are rating the ability high and that's a problem. It's that they rate the challenge as being very high. That's what I'm seeing in the results so far. It should not be work to practice the art of caring detachment. It really should be the natural state that a human exists in.
I'm not surprised though, because again, the prevalent conditioning isn't that, right? Even the billion-dollar self-help industry says, follow my steps, do these exact steps. This is what got me my success, and you'd be successful. So we're breeding people. When I look at cancer culture, all these things, we're telling people they don't have it. They don't have control over themselves to start with. And the answer is out there, not in there.
Yeah.
When I see this caring detachment, to me, this is what I call a from positioning.
Yep.
I want to know where I'm starting from. And that's the importance of having reflective time.
That's right. That's right.
Because that's what I'm bringing to the moment. So when I hear people say, like, I don't get any satisfaction from my job or from my work, I say, well, it's sort of unrealistic to think that you're going to be 100% satisfied. Exactly. But let's break down the word satisfaction. It comes from two root words, satis, which is enough, and facere in Latin means making. So satisfaction isn't what you get from doing it, it's what you bring to it.
Right. And all it's supposed to be is enough.
Exactly.
Yep. All right. So practicing this art of caring detachment, I think that we really want to look and see, are people more centered about it? Are they at least in the green circle? Because I'd like you guys to understand that the oracle of the self speaks most clearly at the center of the change grid. And so if you can just get yourself to the center of the change grid, where, by the way, the center of the change grid, all you really do is acknowledging that no matter how much you know about something, there's still as much there is left to learn. And while whatever you think about the activity on the challenge scale, maybe whatever it is, the fact is that it could be infinitely more difficult and easy. You're just in the middle. It's kind of like I'm somewhere on the middle of the continuum on both ability and challenge when you look at the whole universal sort of range of possibilities. That's all it really is just saying, I'm just centered, I'm balanced, I'm okay with wherever I happen to be.
Key word there is practice.
Because it does take practice. And by the way, these are in an order for a reason. If you practice this art of caring detachment, then you'll probably have an easier time of keeping the relationships free of toxic negativity. You'll have an easier time of walking the path and looking at what you really want, because this is where you help yourself become more objective. There. Okay, number 5. Now, this is an interesting one. Managing your own level of productive tension. Now, keep in mind that activity already presupposes that you are able to measure your own level of productive tension.
And identify.
What's that, dear?
And identify.
And identify. You need to know where you at on the change grid, specific to whatever the activity happens to be. So this idea about being able to manage it presupposes that you are able to identify it. I do believe that at this stage of the game, all of you, if I said, please describe stress, power, apathy, and apathy, you would be able to say, well, here's the differences. This is what's going on. So I think you already know some of the key factors that are involved. Are you able to manage your own level of productive tension? Because that's really more about understanding the change grid maneuvers. What kinds of things raise your tension, lower your tension, increase your drive, reduce your drive? So it'll be very interesting to see how people are plotting when it comes to that. Notice I say the ideal location is 10 and 4. 10 and 4 is all the way down here in power apathy. I want you to reach a point of mastery when it comes to that. I'm not asking you to be down here at 10 and 2 or anything like that, but I'd like you to be more downgrade, where it becomes more of a natural automatic skill, a process, just a routine that you're running. And that's the good part of what happens in power apathy. So you don't need to put a lot of attention into it because it's taking care of itself. The better you get at recognizing and managing your level of tension, the easier and easier it becomes. So that's what that one. Now, when it comes to managing the level of productive tension that other people are experiencing, that's a bit more challenging. And that puts us back up to that analytical driver. So 10 and 8. So if you can manage your own, you should be able to manage others. Just because you can manage others doesn't mean you're managing your own. Does that make sense?
Yes.
What does it mean exactly to manage others? If I step into the confessional, I think I might do, or my responses might be too much of that to where it becomes overwhelming.
Well, and it may very well be that, but again, it's about creating the proper blend of upgrid, outgrid, ingrid, downgrid, and PowerPoint maneuvers. And we can do that. In fact, we do all do that all day long in whatever it is we choose to say to another person. I mean, quite literally, everything that comes out of our mouth is going to affect someone else's level of productive tension. And if we're a bit more thoughtful about it, we can probably construct something that's most likely to work on whatever it is we'd like to
Got it.
person.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. It's all going to go back to change grid maneuvers. That's what it's really all about. How do you manage the level of protection? And by the way, managing also means that you can identify the ideal location so you don't overshoot it. You know, if I'm saying like, well, no, when you're managing your own, having a perceived challenge of 4 is fine. But when you're managing other people's levels of tension, you got to double that. That's up to an 8. There's a lot more going on there than there is when you're managing your own. You get the idea?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, that makes sense now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now,
Pete, got a question.
Yeah.
For 5 and 6, isn't there a correlation between those two back to activity 1?
Well, certainly, I think that the act of walking the path in and of itself is a tension management technique. Technically, it's a downgrid maneuver. Because think about the downgrid maneuvers: normalize, simplify, restore resources, add resources. When I'm walking the path of self-discovery, I don't know about normalize, but I'm definitely doing some simplification stuff by trying to just look at it in a more step-by-step fashion. And because you guys already know it, I would be restoring the resource, reminding you about your fluency that you already have in the path. Or if you're brand new, then I need to add the resource by giving you the training, the skill, the fluency in walking that path of self-discovery. So yeah, I kind of think the walking the path is already a downgrid maneuver, and it's a maneuver we tend to use all the time. So Tim, I think you're absolutely right. Yep. Okay, number 7, recognizing my authentic voice in the chorus of my mind. We've already talked about that. So are you able? And by the way, it's at 6-6. I believe if you can get yourself to 6-6, the voice that becomes prominent, if not the soloist, is your authentic voice. So it's not so much that I work at recognizing my authentic voice as much as I work at getting myself to 6-6 so I can hear my authentic voice. And you get to that point, practice the art of carrying detachment, decide how much of your energy anything is particularly worth, do your own PowerPoint maneuvers. There's things that you can certainly do. Number 8 is about evaluating your attitudes, beliefs, biases, values, and behaviors on an ongoing basis. This is a critical part of the oracle of the self because you are not a fixed entity. You are under constant change. Whether you choose to change or not, that's a different story. But we are highly mutable. We are highly adaptable, highly flexible if we allow ourselves to be that, if we recognize that we can do that. So part of the reason why people end up struggling with toxicity and all that sort of stuff is because they hold certain beliefs or values or biases. Well, actually, there's an order for these things. So the values ultimately are going to dictate the beliefs. The beliefs are going to dictate biases. Biases dictate behaviors, and attitudes are happening throughout that whole sort of process. So if you really wanted to break it down, you could find out that this is not the order in which they occur. But I do believe it's the order in which it's easier to evaluate them. It's a lot easier for me to evaluate my attitude than it is to evaluate my biases. You know, there's some learning that's involved with biases, but the point here is evaluating. That's the verb. Do you have the ability to think about, evaluate, scrutinize, judge your own attitudes, beliefs, biases, values, and behaviors? That happens as an analytical driver. That's why that's the ideal location for that.
Interesting. That's a practice as well.
Well, there's no growth if you don't do this. I mean, what's human growth? I mean, this is it right there. Number 8 is what growth is all about. Number 9, defending against manipulative messages directed my way. This is related a little bit to keeping relationships free of toxic negativity, but this, I hope, feels like it's being more impersonal. These are the incidental, accidental sort of messages that you get exposed to. So if you're on social media, if you're checking the news, if you're whatever ring, there's going to be a lot of messages that are going to be heading your way. That had nothing to do with a particular relationship that you happen to be in. So can you recognize manipulation that's being directed towards you? And so this is why we spent some time talking about those different techniques that are used in the world of influence that are literally designed to make you better at manipulating other people. So yeah, that's sinister, but nevertheless, you need to understand what that's going on, because once you've been manipulated, it's in your brain. You need to defend, and that's why you see it positioned at 10-10. So what am I doing at 10-10? I'm keeping my relationships free of toxic negativity, and I'm defending against manipulative messages that are being directed my way. Okay. Number 10, staying inside my green circle. So I hope all of you guys know what that means by now. It means that being at 6-6 is neither realistic nor the goal. Just get inside your green circle. Good things happen. It's balanced enough.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is so helpful.
Yeah, just stay in the green circle. And if nothing else, forget about recognizing levels of tension. Can you recognize when a situation is moving you outside of your green circle?
Right.
And then you got to ask yourself, am I doing that consciously, deliberately, willingly, or did I just accidentally end up outside of my green circle?
And don't react.
Right. Practice the art of carrying detachment. That pulls you back in, and that's the insulation. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, next one. And this is one of those things that we spend a lot of time in our coaching sessions dealing with, recognizing when my emotions are overruling my logic. Brian can tell us all about the chemistry, but I am telling you that if your neurochemistry is in certain bowls of soup, you can forget logic. It's got nothing to do with you saying, like, I'm going to be logical. No, it's these neurotransmitters, these other brain chemicals that are kind of pulling you into that limbic system, or that more reptilian sort of way that we use our brain and all that sort of thing. And so it really takes it takes some time to be able to even recognize that you're being emotional and not being logical. Because when it's happening, you can't assess it, because assessing it is a logical activity and you're not there. So you get pulled into the emotional state, and yeah. So it's tough to do that. Once you can recognize it, and by the way, the more you're inside your green circle, the less it happens anyway.
So this is upgrade.
Well, it could be upgrade. It could also be outgrade. You could also get into a fighting stance. You could also be downgrade, dismissing something. So it's different emotions, but anytime you step, well, anywhere on the change grid, there are emotions, make no mistake about it. But once you step out of the green circle, the emotions you're going to experience that will overrule logic change depending on what direction you've moved. So
right. This is one of those, Anja talked about it earlier. Like some of our biology can work against us. And this is one of those where emotions, emoto in Latin means movement.
To get movement.
So we're literally designed to feel our way through experiences. But again, if we resist that, then we can't use that as relevant information and say, oh, why do I feel?
You need it to be there, because emotionally driven decisions happen extremely quickly.
Right.
In a life or death situation, look, if your house is on fire, you do not need to form a committee to study the fire.
Exactly.
Okay. Exactly. You need to get out. And so that emotionally driven decision-making and action taking is part of our makeup as a human for positive reasons. It's when we start to behave that way where there is no threat that it becomes a very troubling kind of thing.
Right. And sometimes I wonder if just having an easy life, how easy things are for us. We don't have to hunt and gather. And sometimes I think the ease with which we live, or the more sloth we have.
Slovenly, yes.
Yeah, the more slovenly we are, the more are we looking, I think our brains search for this excitement.
I think it does. It wants to be stimulated. I mean, you're awake. You gotta notice something. Now,
right. And that demand is what
anything.
creates the growth, right?
Yes.
So we need that. But again, we're conditioning this idea of balance and comfort, that's the essence of life.
That's right. That's right.
And that becomes a myth for experiencing real life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Now look at where I put this one as far as an ideal location is concerned. I said 7-7. It's a rare moment that I ever even use an odd number. And so there it is, 7-7. Why is that? Recognizing when my emotions are overruling my logic. It goes back to the green circle. When do I want to recognize that my emotions are overruling my logic? When I'm out past the red circle? When I'm between the green and the red? Or while I'm still in the green?
While you're in the green.
While I'm still in the green. So if we look at a change grid, 7-7 is right here, well inside the green circle. But it's basically saying, just like you need to be the centurion, the guard of negativity, you need to also be the guard of your emotions and where they are. But you don't need to be out here. You just need to constantly say, or be aware, recognize that I am not at the center. I am in my green circle, but I'm feeling something. I'm feeling some upgrid energy that's compelling me to do something sooner rather than later. There's a sense of urgency if I'm over here. Out here, there's this desire to make something happen. Down here, it's that I'm letting something go. You know, whatever it is, there is a different kind of feeling that happens as I move my way around inside this green circle. You guys do recognize this isn't one state. This is a collection of states that are still workable, still inside the green circle, still a nicely balanced life. If you can notice that I'm feeling hints of fight coming along. I hear a whisper of a drive going on. Well, it'd be great to stop there. I might say, is there a logical justification for that?
Right.
To do that. So if you could learn to live inside the green circle, you become more logical. Anyway, by the way, it doesn't mean you don't have emotions, but it's a different set of emotions you have when you're inside the green circle.
Right. And oftentimes the body, again, the mind is playing catch up to where the body has been. So biologically, whenever you're overwhelmed emotionally, you'll feel it like something registers in your body, and it typically registers in weak areas. Like for me, I get it around my neck. My upper body is weaker than my lower body. If I was a footballer, or soccer as they call it in the States. And so legs are stronger. So I tend to feel it right in around the neck.
Yep. Well, from being trained in massage therapy, I can tell you that where you hold your pain reveals a lot.
Exactly.
About going on emotionally. Like, why did your brain choose to create that amount of tension in your shoulders? Why didn't it choose your lower back? I get it. You said you've got powerful legs, but you still have a hand. Why didn't it cripple your hand? You know,
right.
The brain made a choice about where to store that pain. And that's where it's really all about. Now, let me do.
Before you leave this one, this is an interesting discussion, this part for me. And I remember several calls back, Brian made the comment that, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, that the heart develops before the brain.
Yes, it's fully developed. Yeah, because it creates the blood flow to the brain.
Yeah, and I think we perhaps use our emotional energy more so than we do the mental or the logic. But I'm thinking about corporate and in business. The head of HR typically is that person who leans more towards, the empathy, the concern for the well-being of the employees of the organization. And it's always been interesting to me that seldom will that individual ultimately get tapped on the shoulder to become the CEO of a business.
Absolutely. Right. Right.
And I think that there is a downplay or more so towards that concern for the heart of the business and the heart of people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, remember some of the other models that we've talked about divide behavior into head, heart, soul, and gut?
Right.
And heart is definitely the amiable element. And because it's outgrid, you mentioned business. So we kind of presuppose that everything business related is going to be outgrid, but it's still that amiable thing. And we've also talked about that outgrid, that's the chairman. Up here's the CEO. This is the COO, operations officer. This is the CIO or CFO, data driven kinds of stuff. Well, HR is definitely part of operations.
Right.
So yeah, this is often where it would plot. And we need to keep them in there.
And I think that may be why there's been so much traction made around emotional intelligence.
I think so too. I think so too. But again, emotional intelligence, where they talk about where emotional intelligence becomes useful, they tend to be describing somewhat upgrid, somewhat outgrid situations where there's some adaptation that needs to happen, some creative problem solving, team building, interactions with groups, et cetera. That tends to be stuff that's happening here on the change grid. They don't really talk about how do you deal with the profoundly depressed or the profoundly withdrawn. So it's interesting. Now, the last thing I want to say about this whole idea about recognizing when your emotions are overruling your logic. If we look at our little map of neurotransmitters, inside the green circle is the home of serotonin. So serotonin is what counteracts depression, or actually the lack of serotonin is what triggers depression, anxiety, things like that. And so part of the reason why this is such a comfortable state is because serotonin is there, and it's there in great abundance. But serotonin and dopamine don't occupy the same space at the same time.
No.
So this idea about being totally at peace, totally, mellow or whatever, I will say becomes, what's my word? I want to say that it's not really the human experience. Life is lived out here. And because life is lived out here, dopamine is waiting for you because there's work to be done. There's things to accomplish. There's experiences to have, and you need to have a little bit of a reward so you know that you jump through the hoop just the right way. And so dopamine is your reward. Well, as we've talked about several times, if you become addicted to that dopamine, well, you might become power hungry outgrid, or you might become a thrill seeker upgrid, or you might become, complacent and ambivalent, withdrawn, but totally at bliss. You could be pulled here because there's a dopamine release that happens in all four of these extremes, but it doesn't happen here. And by the way, in all fairness to these neurotransmitters, I don't think there's going to be many, if any, neurotransmitter that lives in one single spot. I think you're always looking at gradients. And so serotonin may be most prominent in the exact center of the change grid, but there is probably some trace of serotonin everywhere on the change grid. And similarly, dopamine may be released at the extremes, but I'll bet there's still a little bit of a hint, a little shadow, maybe a little sense of reward or satisfaction, knowing that you are at peace.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know that an at peace person asks themselves such a question, but there you go. All right. So the last two, and I know we're over, but defining mission critical activities for a given change. This is now getting into using the change grid. If I'm not mistaken, all of you have access to a personal change grid. And so if you don't, let me know. I'll tell you I can get access to a personal change grid, but I pretty much think all of you have it. You got to use the thing, people. So in order to use your personal change grid, yeah, there's some mechanical things. And if you haven't done it for a while, maybe we do need to revisit how do you log in? How do you start a grid? What's its capabilities? I'm happy to do that. You got to be able to use that personal change grid. But I can teach you exactly how to use the personal change grid, and it's not going to make any difference unless you can craft a decent mission critical activity list. So the real power of the change grid is in defining the activities. The rest of it just kind of happens. So this, you got to get really good at, and forget a grid for a second, just in life saying, okay, X is happening. What is the most important thing for me to do right now? That's mission critical. If you say, what's the set of things I need to be working with, dealing with, take care of, that's mission critical. Mission critical activities don't just come floating by. I mean, you got to think about what's really, really important. And again, in our role as coaches and consultants, we have no idea how many of our conversations with executives is just about getting them to tell you, what exactly do you want your people to do? And they'll say, well, we just want them to be more productive. What the hell does that mean?
Right.
What do you want them to start doing, stop doing, and continue doing? We got to know these things. That's the mission critical activities. And very often clients are just thrilled if all you do is say to them, I just want you to make a list of things that are, continue, start, continue, and stop doing. That they'll go, oh, that was so valuable. All right, no, we got to put those on a change grid to really see how ready you are to do those things. But you got to know, what are your mission critical activities? So in fact, today, Linda and I are doing what we always do on the first of the year, and that's put together what our lists are for the coming year. And the lists we're really working on are all the things that we need to do for the house or for the business or whatever. These lists are absolutely essential because it is from those lists that you can set priorities, and then you can put together whatever those mission critical tasks happen to be, if you really do want to get these things taken care of.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Yeah, that's why I like you guys so much. I do.
Yeah, because we're reading from the same hymnal. There you go. Now, I won't know the answer to the free text questions until I run the report. And look at what it does. Please provide me with 3 thoughtful questions you have about what I said you've. That's what it puts in for an apostrophe. Okay. Yeah, don't use apostrophes, apparently, if you're, or I got to talk to the developer. So far, and what you'd like to know more about. So this is, again, just helping me craft whatever our lesson plan is moving forward. Okay, so with that said, we've certainly gone over time. I would encourage you guys to complete the ChangeWorks profile for our next call, and I will read the grids, or actually I'll have you read the grids for me. Now, just to make sure that I can do this. Oh, look, it logs me out. Log back in. Fine. Thank you for helping. View profiles. I'm going to get the link. Copy the link. Da, 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 da. Copy. And I'm chatting this over to everybody. If you've already filled it out, you've already filled it out. But if you haven't, you have it there. Just click on it, copy and paste it. I can certainly email it again, but there you got it. You got it right there. Okay, questions, comments?
No, this has been wonderful.
When is the retreat?
Yeah, when's the retreat? You know, I'm open to doing a retreat, but I would say that if we're going to do it in Arizona, we'd have to do it either before May, late May, or after probably October, something like that. Unless you guys want to save a whole lot of money, you'd be surprised how cheap you can get rooms at luxury resorts if you don't mind it being 118 degrees. So that's up to you guys. Only you know that
green circle.
Exactly. There you go. There you go. Only you know at what temperature you melt, and will it move you outside of your green circle. All righty. So thanks, everybody. We will talk again next time.
Thank you.
Bye for now.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day, everybody.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Cheers.